Right, ARL Commissioner boss Pete V'landys has revealed plans for the NRL to bury the AFL as Australia's number one sport. I like his ambition, Derm. So he's keen to leverage America's massive wagering and broadcast market. He says the NRL spreading its tentacles to one of the world's most powerful nations can leave rival winter code, the AFL, in the shade. We're doing as much due diligence as we can in America to make rugby league a great success in this country. He goes on to speak about the population, and even if you get 1% of the population here, it is worth millions to us. The AFL has tried South Africa. It has tried New Zealand, Derm.
Yeah.
It's tried China.
Yep.
Are we missing a trick by not going international? And would it, and where would it be a success, if anywhere, internationally, do you think?
First of all, I love Pete V'landys. He goes into bat for his
Has a
sport,
crack.
and he's in balls and all, isn't he? He's in it. He's up to his eyeballs. He's fantastic. He's got a couple of advantages with his game. And please take this the right way. It's a very simplistic game. And because it is so simplistic, it's a tremendously honest game. It's a very good viewership game on television because you can basically, for 99% of the game you look at on TV, you can see the entirety of the sport unfolding. Australian rules doesn't have that luxury. We kick the ball so far. There's no offside rule, so you don't get all the combatants in one screen, in one shot. What happens for a forward, what he's doing his work 70 metres ahead of the ball is not captured by the TV screen unless you go back and do a slow-mo replay. So it's not all that user-friendly. It can still be as exciting, even more so exciting because of the natural traits. But for a new audience, i.e. the Americans, the relationship you want to make with them, they will be able to understand it. The thing we have to understand with the American psyche, though, is they are very narrow-minded. They have their sports, and you try and tell an American NFL supporter who loves it and wears the cap on with the Bengals or the Packers. You try and tell him to watch basketball, he'll go, "Get out of here, man. I'm not watching that." That's in his own country. So they are rusted on for their own sport. So to try and get them to watch a foreign sport, even, as I say, it's user-friendly to understand. Basically, for the layman, one team's got the ball and they've got to run past the other team and put it on the ground.
And should they be focusing on capturing the national Australian market before they go overseas? Like, I'm in Adelaide. We had a crack at it. It wasn't successful here back in the day with the Adelaide Rams. Like, should they be trying to capture Perth,
the Western
and Adelaide,
Reds further?
Perth, so before going.
But that was
international, and you're right.
I think they recognise, Kane, that the markets here in those states are locked in. We have that. A team like Melbourne Storm has its own niche supporter base. There's a tremendous amount of the beautiful people from New Zealand who love the sport, and they find themselves in Melbourne for work, for life, for family, and they have flocked to the Melbourne Storm, and they're the lifeblood of the supportership of Melbourne Storm. And of course, there's so many others that come along with them, but there was a supporter base there ready to be tapped into, similar to the way the AFL say, "Oh, there's so many ex-Victorians on the Gold Coast. We can get them to support the Gold Coast Suns. Let's tap into them." The only problem with that is when you go to the Gold Coast, there's so many more things you can do on the Gold Coast. Whereas when you come to Melbourne in wintertime, the Melbourne audience demands either entertain me at the theatre, feed me good food at the local pub or restaurant, and put on a good sporting match. That's what the Melburnians demand of their lifestyle, because in the middle of winter in Melbourne, it ain't great at 12 degrees.
Good coffee as well. Get me a great coffee.
Yeah,
all right, what do you think? We would love your thoughts on this. Is the AFL missing a trick by not going international, or are they doing the right thing and then trying to sort of capture the Queensland and New South Wales market while the NRL is departing? And should they respond? I mean, Gil McLachlan was very quick-witted and very smart with his responses and the little friendly rivalry that we have. I wonder if Andrew Dillon will do the same. You can have your say on the IMAR Insurance Open Line 1300 736 736. Did you ever go with the Hawks pre-season on a trip to play a game? Port Adelaide went to England 1 year to play a game there in the pre-season. Other teams have done similar. Dubai, I think Adelaide.
So
went and played
you
a
did
game.
some of them?
Yeah, when I was there, we went to England, but my son was sick, so I stayed home at the time. But the boys loved it. It was a junket, and they actually played a game. Did you ever do that?
Little bit different, Kane. We went on the end of season exhibition games, which weren't taken. We weren't taking training all that seriously. Although if you played a team like we played Essendon once, I think it was 88 or 89 when they went out in straight sets. So we were coming home every morning at 6 a.m. They were training at 6 a.m. Yes. So, Sheeds had them training. You usually found that in those end-of-season exhibition matches overseas, the team which departed the finals unceremoniously took it a little more seriously than the ones who progressed and had a bit of success. Yeah.
All right. Great call, Derm, as an ex-Melburnian living on the Gold Coast. They hate AFL up here. It is cold. I'm not sure what the CG is. If the AFL want to go international, they won't go to the UK. I remember they played a few exhibition games, which is what I was talking about there back in the day with the amount of expats living in London. It could explode in Europe, says Michael. He's kidding himself, says Harry. Take out the Broncos crowd and Collingwood alone have a bigger crowd in one game than a whole round of the NRL.
They don't attend. I mean, they do, but the crowds, is it the grounds or is it just the grounds are made to suit the size of the crowds? Because it's a 8,000, and then people will say, "Oh, yeah, but you get a Giants game, you get a Suns game." But we regularly, I forget what it's 40-odd thousand, I think, the average game in Melbourne. Yeah.
Yep. All right. NFL, NBA, college sports, MLB, MLS, lacrosse, hockey, pickleball. The list goes on. Says Ben.
What's pickleball?
Pickleball is the fastest growing sport. Derm. It's like a mix of tennis and table tennis. So you play on almost like a half court tennis court.
Oh, is that with the wooden bats?
Yeah, with the wooden bats and like a plastic ball.
Yep.
And I'm so keen. It looks a lot of fun. So if you go to America now, there's pickleball courts everywhere, and it's exploding.
Why pickle?
So, I don't know why they call it pickleball. I'm not sure. Someone will let us know that, but hasn't quite come to Australia yet. Well, it has, but not to those levels. But it's one to watch. There's certainly some celebrities investing in pickleball teams, becoming very serious over there.
There's a text. The one about the USA has a great rugby sevens team, but that is the NRL's chance to go and get the people that love sevens to love league. So, thanks to Ben who sent that.
Collingwood get more to training than rugby gets to games, says Sean. And Dermy, spot on. Americans hate change. The same yellow school buses forever, feet and inches, rest of the world metric. Couple of many NRL.
They make a great pastrami sandwich, though, the Americans. Have you ever had one of them over there?
No,
oh, mate. See, that's the difference between America and Australia, Kane. I'll just tell you, the fast food outlets, fast food, a sandwich areas. Australia, it's like, you look up on the board, $10 for a sandwich, and it's like, how little can we give this bloke now that he's got $10? We'll save out of this. Whereas the Americans, they go, $10, we're going to make you want to come back tomorrow. Yeah, they pile it in there. They're going to make it so good you have to stop by every day. There's a different psyche in the way they address and hand out food.
I love it. AFL.com.au journalist Cal Twomey has been in ripping form again this week. You'd think the trade period's over, the footy season is finished, but nah, this guy comes into his own at this time of year as we gear up for the draft for Cobram Estate, Australia's premium extra virgin olive oil. He joins us. Cal, thanks for your time.
No worries, Kane. Thanks for the pump up. G'day, Derm.
Hey, I liked your reporting on the offers coming thick and fast for West Coast Pick 1, which they have rejected. What was your initial response to that? Because they were strong offers. Both take us through Melbourne's and North Melbourne's.
Yeah, so 2 offers are put forward. Melbourne's offers pick 6, 11, 42 this year and a future first rounder. So 3 first round picks as well as the extra on top, the 42. And then North Melbourne floated one of their top 2 picks. We've obviously got 2 and 3 and 2 of their later first round picks. And they've obviously got 15, 17, 18 there for pick 1 and 23. I wouldn't so much say that they've been rejected as just they haven't made West Coast move and they haven't made West Coast blink yet. And that's important to know that, they still have 3 weeks to go, 3.5 weeks to go before the draft. So picks are able to be swapped up until November 10 and then again on draft night. There's just no reason for West Coast to be blinking at the moment or to make a deal. You're waiting to see what the club's going to put forward for its absolute best offer. Melbourne can't offer too much more. There's not much more they really can do, but they've basically given up their available picks this year and their future first, which means they can't add any more picks in for the future to that. North Melbourne can do things differently, and I think when it comes to crunch, probably will be able to come up with one more offer that doesn't include getting pick 23 back, or it's pick 2 and all of their picks in the teams, something like that. So, look, I still think there's a little bit of a way to go here, and West Coast still haven't been made to absolutely, put it on the line and say this is what we're going to do, because they don't have to yet.
Cal, what could get it done? There'll be people out there saying, "Oh, look, we reckon we should have it. We can get it done." And most people are willing to offer a warm beer and get a pot of gold back. So, but what would entertain them? What would get it done?
Well, if they're confident on a player being available at 6 that they really like, then Melbourne's offer is pretty strong with 3 first-round picks. The only thing is that Melbourne, of course, we think will still be a challenger next year, so their future first-rounder maybe isn't quite as appealing as others. But the North Melbourne scenario where if they do offer pick 2 and all of their picks in the team, so pick 2, pick 15, pick 17 and pick 18, just for 1 and nothing else coming back to North Melbourne, then I think that's an offer that you really would have to stop and think and go, okay, well, if we move back 1 spot, we're getting 3 extra players who are going to be around that point later in the first round, and also pick 2, which you'd expect to be Daniel Curtin. Now, the other bit that's worth knowing about this draft is that from 12 onwards, it's so even. So I've said for a lot of the year that I think the part of the draft that maybe doesn't match up with other stronger drafts is the 13 to 21 part of the draft. I think there's going to be some players picked in that part of the draft that in previous years wouldn't have been selected quite that high, but there is that gap. Then it evens itself out again, Derm. Once it gets back into the second round, I think they're probably the second round type that we've seen, over many years. But that's why North Melbourne throwing in these extra end of first round picks may not be as appealing for West Coast, particularly if they're giving something back. So I think, if you offer up 4 picks and it's pick 2 and the 3 in the team, and North Melbourne end up with pick 1 and 3 and Parley Reid and one of the midfielders, and that's a pretty good result as well.
You've got Jed Walter ranked 2. We know he's going to the Gold Coast. Who would you pick with the second pick in the draft, or the second selection, wherever that lands?
Yeah, so obviously Jed, I don't really even count Jed in my head, really. As much as if it was, an open draft, I think that's where he'd go. Might get a bid there. If I was just having to pick, I'd probably pick one of Zane Dersma or Colby McKercher. Yeah. I think I ranked Zane Dersma 3, Colby McKercher 4. What's that, sorry?
So you can, if you had to, at a pinch, split those 2, you would take Dersma?
I just think the goal kicking is the bit that I've had him slightly ranked. It's been, 90 to 91 on my scale, so it's not much in it. But Dersma kicked 35 goals, and I just had Dean on. He's a very different player to Xavier, a very different player to Willem, who's coming through as well. I'd probably take Dersma, but both of them are going to be deserving if they're picked in that spot. McKercher, 182 centimetre midfielder, but fast. And if you're North Melbourne and you hold at that spot, then both of them or either of them are going to be something different to what your mix is. But yeah, Dersma's goal kicking is probably the factor that I just have him a slight edge ahead.
Now, we all know that more than likely, well, probably a sure thing, Harley Reid will go number 1 no matter who gets it. The boy Jed Walter, you just touched on him. If you're looking at building teams in an an unbiased draft, this kid, Jed Walter, could challenge, and some clubs would probably, if it was unbiased, take Jed Walter as number one. This kid, I mean, every player's got flaws, but right now, at this age, at this size, at these exploits that he's got, and these talents he has at his disposal, with his pace is just insane for the size of him. This boy should be a number one.
Yeah, unbiased draft, but maybe an unbiased view from you, Derm, given the powerful, athletic, strong, big key forward who has a bit of swagger as well. He's got all of that.
But they don't grow on trees. You get one of them out of every 100.
I agree with you completely. And he's actually different to any draft key forward that I've seen over the last 10 years of covering the draft. I think of all the top, key forwards who've been really early in the draft. So the Tom Boyd, Paddy McCartan in his year, Josh Shackey was picked too. There's been some other guys, Charlie Curnow, but he's probably closest to Charlie Curnow.
Correct.
Of the type. He's not super, super tall, but 195, 196 centimetres, and can mark it well, crashes packs. He loves the physicality, and that you don't see that much in junior ranks too much anymore. It's not played that way at under 18 level, but he loves it. And he also enjoys the tackling. I've never seen a key forward, tackle and chase like he does. That's part of his shtick. He loves doing that. So yeah, I agree with you that even in an open draft, he'd be absolutely in contention. It just comes down to the club, I think.
So for Cal, I'm just bringing that for football lovers, when we're watching next year, just watch this kid, Jed Walter. Just watch him as a football lover.
What a bonus for Gold Coast with the three they're going to get, including him. Any other pick swaps on the horizon? You've mentioned Geelong's pick 8 that a couple of teams are interested in.
I think a few clubs are looking to move up the board potentially to have a look at that. We know Adelaide's trying to move up the board. I think if Melbourne stay at 6 and 11, then we'll potentially see some activity from them to see if they can edge their way up. We know that's been part of their sort of mantra all the way through. North Melbourne, should they not get the pick 1, I think they'd see if they can bundle up those picks in the teens and move in. Wouldn't surprise me if Fremantle look, if the right player gets through to late in the first round, if they swap a future first in to move in as well. And then I look at the Gold Coast picks in the 20s, and there's still a chance that, they did a fantastic job during the trade period of etching their way back, but having so many points up their sleeve as well. Still think there's still a chance those picks that they've got in the 20s, 24, 26, 27, are going to be something that clubs go and try and move up the board if you're in the 30s. So there's all that to come. There's been a massive drop-off over the last couple of years of picks that are swapped in the pick swaps period. I think back in 2019, there was 26 picks swapped between the end of trade and the start of draft. Last year, there was 7. So far, none this year. So clubs are holding their powder dry a little bit on that one and just waiting to see how it all unfolds. But I think we'll see a little bit of action, as soon as the gates open on draft night with some of these.
Hey, you had Laura Kane, the footy boss, on Gettable during the week. I was interested in the views on the mid-season trade. They didn't give too much away, but she did speak about the parameters that they may need to put on mid-season trade. And I was a bit concerned because I just thought, if you're going to do it, let's do it. Let's be all in and don't restrict players or clubs on what they can and can't do in a mid-season trade period if it is introduced, which we know it will be. Do you have a thought on the best way that it works and whether clubs will be too restricted by this early days?
I get the sense there'll be a fair few, as you say, parameters, restrictions on it to begin with, just because I don't think the AFL will want to see the rich get richer and the poor get even worse. So, and for games at the second half of the season to really drop off in terms of competitive balance. So it's going to be a fine line to walk. I'm not exactly sure how they do that. Is it, in terms of a pay scale? Is it in terms of how many games the player has played to that point of the year? Only players who've played fewer than 5 games, are up for grabs or anything like that, or if it's the players paid less than the average salary of the players who are available. I don't think I did listen to you talk about it on Wednesday, Kane. Yeah. I'm probably of the view a little bit like, I'm not sure it's super for the game if the best players are swapping clubs mid-season to go and chase a flag, but and then making the worst teams worse. But I understand what you're saying in that front as well.
It's a good opportunity, don't you think, for the bottom teams? Like, let's pluck a name, right? Like, so Jeremy McGovern from West Coast, nearing the end of his career. Port Adelaide desperately need a key defender as they lead up to the finals. Let's use the example last year. And they're willing to overpay for McGovern, who is nearly done. He might be able to chase another premiership. And West Coast may get, I don't know, a first-round draft pick for a player that's got 20 games left in him. So I don't know if it would make the weaker teams weak. Yes, for that year it would. But for the future, it may be able to set them up in a way.
No, that's a great point too. Absolutely, and I do think we would see clubs pay overs for that because they're in the moment, aren't they? And yeah, there's that opportunity that pops up. Look, I reckon we'll see some steady steps into it before we've reached the point where everything's up for grabs. And whether that's next year or the year after, it does sound like there's a level of momentum though for it next year. I still think there hasn't been a huge push from clubland for it.
Right.
To be honest, like it's been a mild push from certain quarters. I still think the non-Victorian clubs feel like it's going to be advantageous more to the Victorian clubs than the interstate clubs, which I think is probably a fair question around relocation and how much easier it is with players still having to give consent for trades. Whether there's someone who's more likely to move from Burleigh to Broadmeadows rather than Brighton to Broadmeadows or whatever it is. So, I think there's a little bit of work to go there.
Hey, Cal, for those who like the Hollywood movie line story theme, the late, great Paul Deere, who passed away, the former Norm Smith medalist, I saw his son play half a dozen, maybe 8 games this year, Cal Deere for Sandy Dragons. Now, the kid's got something, but there's still a few areas he needs to really work on with his game. But the kid's got something. For those who barrack for that movie line storyline, are the Hawks making any noises whether they will father-son him in a draft?
Yeah, he's been a good story, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Towards the back end of the season as well. And yeah, for the Sandringham Dragons really come on. Some ruck work, a little bit of forward stuff as well. I actually saw him play a really good game at the start of the year. Then he had sort of some ups and downs, and everyone, as you say, knows the background with his family. The Hawks are pretty quiet on the father-son front. They don't give too much away, and that's traditionally been their way. I still think that they've obviously got Will McCabe coming as well, so they'll get him, the son of Luke, who's the footy director at the moment. That'll be a top 25 bid, I think, for him. I think a bid or nomination for Calcia probably comes sort of 40 onwards, but I do think he'll end up at the Hawks. That's my take on it, and I think he should. I think he's sort of shown enough to suggest that in this draft as well, given his athleticism up forward, marking, and it's hard to find talls who can do a bit of both of those things now in the draft. So when you've got one who might be a little bit easier to get through to your club, I think that's a good option for them. So they haven't absolutely committed, and they never really do. Clubs are a little bit, unless they're really at the top end now, clubs kind of sit on the fence a little bit to see where the bid actually comes, if it surprises a little bit early or whatnot. But I think there's the Hawks will have 3 picks, and he could well be their last. Or there's a chance also he gets through to their rookie selection, which I'm sure they'd grab him at that point too.
Loving your work. Appreciate your time as always generous with it, and we look forward to hearing more of you as we lead up to the draft.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.